Is there anything you would have done differently?
We reported a true story.
Our colleague Brian Williams is back in Kuwait City tonight after a close call in the skies over Iraq.
Controversial Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh and questions about Kavanaugh's drinking in the past.
Sean Hannity, come on up, Sean Hannity.
Today, Andrew Cuomo is having a moment.
Hi, I'm Chris Steyerwalt.
And I'm Eliana Johnson.
Fact, fact, fact. Welcome to Ink-Stained Wretches, where we break down what's going wrong and what's going right with the American news media. Eliana Johnson, I have to ask you about your sneakers.
Oh, you know what? These are another
Kick it up.
buy.
Kick it
Okay,
up.
I'll kick it up for the camera.
Okay.
These sneakers,
All right.
the real version,
Yeah.
you're not even going to believe. Let me make sure the camera is getting me. These retail for $780 or something.
You're right. I don't believe it.
Yes,
Okay.
it's shocking.
Okay.
Well, I ordered them from China
A facsimile
for $100.
for $100.
Yeah.
Well, I like them because what brand are they supposed to be?
Loewe. Look, Nate Moore
Nate
knows.
Moore knows what
Nate Moore.
Nate Moore.
Nate, aren't they exactly the same? And I have gone into the department stores and put them up next to each other. The Chinese are good at this.
Well, I like it because it looks like Laverne DeFazio's monogram from Laverne and Shirley, so I'm there for it. But I could tell that they were specialty sneakers, and I'm glad we have. Well, I mean, I could tell that they're special. And I'm glad that you can share the story about the sweatshop labor that goes into keeping your fit. I'm for it.
That was a real way to shame me. Speaking of shaming.
Speaking of shaming.
I mean, our front page, of course. The meltdown at NBC News over the 48-hour hiring and firing of former RNC chairwoman of...
Like 5 days, not even a half a Scaramucci.
Ronna McDaniel as a correspondent.
Or a contributor.
Excuse me. A contributor at a reported salary of $300,000 a year.
So should we begin with listening to Chuck Todd's moment of righteous indignation?
Let's say first that this was announced in a note to NBC on last Friday. And then McDaniel was a guest on Meet the Press on Sunday, where she was interviewed by Kristen Welker, the host of Meet the Press.
Chuck Todd's replacement.
It was yes, and then it was followed by a panel on which Chuck Todd was a guest, and he had this to say.
Let me deal with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I think our bosses owe you an apology for putting you in this situation, because I don't know what to believe. She is now a paid contributor by NBC News. So I have no idea whether any answer she gave to you was because she didn't want to mess up her contract. She wants us to believe that she was speaking for the RNC when the RNC was paying for her. So she has credibility issues that she still has to deal with.
Yeah.
Is she speaking for herself, or is she speaking on behalf of who's paying her? Once at the RNC, she did say that, hey, I'm speaking for the party. I get that. That's part of the job. So what about here?
Todd's complaint was that Ronna McDaniel had suborned Donald Trump's lies about the election and had soft-soaped the claims about January 6th being an inside job or whatever, that she had mouthed or looked the other way on these claims. But then when Welker asked her about these things, she said, no, I think that that's wrong, and I think they should be punished for it. And then asked why, she said, well, because that's what your job is when
She said you got to take one for the team.
Yeah, that's what your job is.
I have a couple of thoughts on this, and I'm curious what you think. The first is that surely if NBC News, which hired Ronn McDaniel, and ABC News, I believe, has Reince Priebus on the payroll.
Okay.
It's frustrating to me as somebody on the right that these are the go-to spokesmen for the right. My first thought was surely they could have found a more articulate, better spokeswoman for the cause than she.
Right. And
that part is frustrating to me, and part of me wonders, like, do they look for people who are not the most articulate spokesman for the cause? And the other part of it is, of course, Chuck Todd opened the floodgates, and all of these people came out.
The whole MSNBC universe, Joe Scarborough, by the way, who was hired in exactly the same fashion that Ronna McDaniel was when he was a former Republican congressman, Gingrich revolutionary congressman from Florida, was hired in exactly the same manner, trying to add Republican voices at NBC. He got up on his hind legs, and Rachel Maddow, and I think it was in Playbook. I'm sorry if I'm mistaken about this, but at one point there was even a catalog of who on MSNBC has spoken out about it and who has not. And then it listed too. It was like Lawrence O'Donnell and so. Over to you. Like, okay, this is the signal now for everyone to
pile on.
Now, some useful backstory here.
Can I?
You can do anything
before
you
do
want.
The backstory. The most insane one of these was definitely, and we have to play the clip of Nicole Wallace saying, "How could NBC turn over our sacred airwaves and give her? She's now a card-carrying member of the NBC family." And oh my gosh, I mean.
And who's Nicole Wallace?
Nicole Wallace, the former Bush administration spokeswoman. I mean, the arrogant self-regard is so nauseating. Give me a break.
Here it is.
What we've also said to election deniers is not just they can do that on our airwaves, but that they can do that as one of us, as badge-carrying employees of NBC News, as paid contributors to our sacred airwaves.
Okay, so what Nicole Wallace is saying is the same thing Joe Scarborough is saying, which is it's fine to hire Republicans. They just can't be too Republican-y. It's fine to hire Republicans, but they can't support Republicans. And the backstory here that I find interesting, when MSNBC hired Jen Psaki, a very similar kind of hire, right? When MSNBC hired Jen Psaki, here was the headline on a CNN piece: NBC News journalist vexed by MSNBC's move to hire White House press secretary Jen Psaki. And the journalists at NBC tutted MSNBC for hiring a mouthpiece. For Noah Oppenheim, the NBC News president, even held an impromptu phone call so that he could address the matter with vexed staffers at the Washington Bureau, some of whom have complained to their superiors that tentative hiring tarnishes the NBC News brand.
And by the way, she has a show, a primetime show.
But so part of this is driven by office politics, internal dynamics. So NBC News looks down its nose at MSNBC for understandable reasons, right? NBC News is a impressive global. It's America's leading television news. Lester Holt is.
Okay, Nicole.
No, I'm saying NBC News looks at MSNBC askance for a reason, right? Because MSNBC is intensely and intentionally partisan and blah, 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 blah. So this was a chance for MSNBC to pay back NBC News, right? Like, oh, are we allowed to publicly voice our vexation with the other part of our corporate siblings' misconduct in hiring? Oh, okay, well, we can do this. And then, of course, they loved it so much. Once they got to start doing it, they loved it so much because it was a chance for everybody to demonstrate to their audience, and this is a great example of how audience capture works. MSNBC, it felt so good to get to say to their loyal viewers, we would never tolerate this. We will never have this. We'll never allow it. And it felt so good, so they all just took a turn doing it. And I saw here the same thing that we saw at the New York Times, that we've seen at the Washington Post, and that we've seen at a lot of other places. I would not have hired Ronna McDaniel. right? If I was the head of NBC News, I wouldn't have hired her simply for the fact that what do you get, right? She's not having a person.
You're making my point. She's
Yeah.
not good.
Having a person, you can hire contributors for access, which is kind of icky but understandable. But she doesn't have access because she's been banished and exiled by the Trump people. Or you can hire them. You know who I love? Claire McCaskill. You know why I love Claire McCaskill? She's a former Democratic senator, and she has interesting stuff to say when she comes on television. She goes on MSNBC. I don't agree with her all the time, but she has interesting stuff to say. At News Nation, I love Mick Mulvaney. You know why I love Mick Mulvaney? He worked in the Trump White House. He worked in the Trump administration. He was in Congress, but he's an interesting analyst with all of this experience. Paying someone, here's how I will put it. Paying someone to be a reliable mouthpiece for a political party is not a good use of money. Just book people from the party, right? You don't need to hire the former. You can just book the person from the party to come on and tell you what the party line is. So I wouldn't have hired her. I get it. But neither would I have engaged in the kind of solipsistic, self-seeking, glory-hogging, ball-hogging, preposterous behavior that these people in MSNBC did. If you have a complaint about the way that, and it's not even your company, right? The way that somebody in another division of your company is operating, there are ways to do it and there are ways not to do it, and this was juvenile beyond juvenile.
Well, I don't totally agree with your point about MSNBC tutting NBC, in that Chuck Todd of NBC, who has his own issues with MSNBC, led the charge in all of this.
Well, that's what made it sad.
And
invited back on the show that you got fired from to come on the panel and say, and to try to white knight it, it's a little rich. And my thing for Todd is doing that. The people who drove him out of his job, right? The activated, very online left that believed that Chuck Todd was a stalking horse for MAGA America or something. I don't think they're going to warm up to him. I don't think that him having done this, they're going to say, now we like Chuck Todd.
And beyond that, so MSNBC and NBC were united in their objection to having Ronna McDaniel on. And then they're all saying, it's not that we object to Republicans, it's that we object to Ronna McDaniel because she was towing the Trump line on all of this. Well, hello, guys. You know, the Republican Party is the Trump Party. And to the extent you want a faithful representative of the current Republican Party on your airwaves, they are going to be doing this. Exactly. And so I had a very interesting conversation with somebody last night, another a well-known journalist, who said, you know, I do think they had to draw a line, and this is beyond the pale. And I think that is a debate you can have. But to the extent you want an actual representative of where the party is and you want to expose viewers to that, you're going to have to expose them to people who are going to agree with Trump when he says things that are beyond the pale.
Right.
And have that debate.
The Semafor piece, the conflict over McDaniel threatens to reverse some of the gains that top network figures believed it had made to establish some credibility with members of the Republican Party. NBC lobbied hard behind the scenes for a GOP primary debate, dispatching anchor Lester Holt to meet with the RNC as part of the network's pitch. It worked. NBC was the first non-Fox outlet to secure a debate. And throughout the GOP presidential primary, the television news organization and its digital counterpart broke a number of major stories about the contest. And I guess what I would say is I can tell you that there are real consequences for displeasing your network's audience, right? I've been to the fair and I have seen the elephant. And this, I guess my point here, most of all, is this was just handled impossibly badly. This was just from start to finish handled impossibly badly. And it also it also speaks to the fact that trying to find, I feel the pain. Finding Republicans who are, as you say, in step with Donald Trump, but not
And that means in step with the party, basically.
that are in step with the party. So there's a bunch of Republicans who are trying to occupy the same space that Romney McDaniel failed to occupy, which is we're just waiting till it's over, right? So there are these like Mitch McConnell is out, Romney McDaniel is out, the Kevin McCarthy is out. All of those people who were like, we're just going to hold the line and stay Republican until the fever breaks, that's over. And the people who, if you want voices who are really in step with where the party is today, you have like Donald Trump's daughter-in-law. You have like that's where you have to go if you want to have those voices. But then these outlets struggle with this thing. If you hire people like that, what are you going to do? Argue with them? Right. So if you have on a person who will faithfully repeat Donald Trump, even when Donald Trump's lying, then, and you pay them. So I hired you. Now I'm going to argue with you. You were colleagues, but now we're going to fight. And, you know, if you look at how Fox tries to navigate the space of having Democrats on shows, you get Harold Ford, you get Jessica Tarlaw. Jessica does a great job. Right, she does a hard job in a difficult space, and does well at it. But as you know, Juan Williams, I can say the same thing about Juan. But finding people who are authentically of a point of view, who are not self-loathing Republican. MSNBC excels at finding self-loathing Republicans. Right, the Jen Rubin effect. Oh, we're going to have now even Republicans say this is terrible. Finding people who authentically believe the things that they believe and stand up for them, but not having it just be hippie punching is hard.
Should we talk Candace Owens?
Do it.
And her parting of ways with the Daily Wire. So she is no longer with the Daily Wire, where she had a podcast and a show. And I have to say, one thing I don't understand, and we'll get to the excellent...
Well, first, will you tell us who she is? How would you describe Candace Owens?
She's a African-American MAGA provocateur.
Kanye West enthusiast.
Yes. I was going to say anti-Semite.
Yes. And yet we repeat ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Who intentionally picked fights with her employer.
And we talked about it on the show that she called out Ben Shapiro, who started the Daily Wire. You know, you can't love God and money. You can't serve two masters, and lots of anti-Semitic-y kind of tropes.
But one thing I'm puzzled by is that a couple of months ago, it was right after October 7th when this stuff came to a head, the Daily Wire said it had no power to fire her.
Yes.
Shapiro said that, and Jeremy Boring, who's the CEO of the Daily Wire, said that. So I'm not clear, and they haven't made clear what changed. But anyhow, they have parted ways. And
the great Christine Rosen
of AEI and commentary fame has a wonderful piece.
Substitute host.
Yes, substitute host for me. The hateful Candace Owens. Do you want to read from it, Chris?
She is, in fact, more akin to a flat earther. Owens frequently makes claims that have no basis in evidence in a bid to gain attention and cultivate followers. Just before Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the United States in December 2022, for example, Owens falsely claimed that his wife was spending American money on French fashion, posting on X, "We want nothing to do with you. Stop stealing from our people while your wife drops tens of thousands of dollars shopping in Paris." Period. Despicable. Period. In an interview with NBC News, Owens criticized people who, quote, mindlessly vote, yet she had to admit that she herself had not bothered to vote in the previous two presidential elections. Whether she is criticized for saying something irresponsible or factually incorrect or anti-Semitic, Owens immediately plays the victim and claims persecution as a Christian or an African American. With Dennis Prager, for whom Owens once briefly worked, gently chastised her for defending Kanye West's anti-Semitic statements. Owens used her podcast as a venue to attack Prager, who is Jewish. As she told The New Yorker, she called and yelled at him, saying, "I'm not playing this game with the Jewish community again." Game? ? And Christine does such a good, useful job of breaking this down, talking about how it works. She does it with her typical cool dispassionate and effective rhetoric. She is excellent, and we are well served by it.
She notes that Owens is exactly the kind of person that conservatives thought that they needed to cultivate. But as her audience has grown, and we saw the same thing with Tucker Carlson.
Yes.
She's become more conspiratorial and more anti-Semitic.
Yeah, if your business model is being outrageous, you will need more and more. It's like a heroin addiction. You will need more and more smack to generate the kind of outrage that your business model requires. And it's just like, get out. You have to forego, in order to keep your sanity and to be some kind of a responsible journalist. There's just a lot of stuff you're going to have to forego.
Chris, you flagged this piece in the New York Times.
Yes.
Chasing clicks in the jungle. Right-wing influencers descend on the Darién Gap.
Here's the lead. Ayub Ibrahim had just walked out of the jungle. His feet still ached. A month earlier, he had left his home in Somalia, fleeing a civil war, he said, traveling to Turkey, then Brazil, and finally crossing on foot through the 66-mile expanse of wilderness known as the Darién Gap. Resting in the sweltering San Vicente migrant camp in Panama with hundreds of other arrivals, he suddenly found himself surrounded by half a dozen Americans with video cameras. Do you guys like Ilhan Omar? One person asked. What do you think about Joe Biden? Mr. Ibrahim, 20, answered the questions. He said he liked and admired Ms. Omar, the first Somali American to serve in Congress. He doesn't follow American politics, he added, but thinks Mr. Biden is a good president. When asked if Mr. Biden or former President Donald J. Trump would be better for immigrants, he chose Mr. Biden. Later, Mr. Ibrahim would say he felt ambushed, I bet, and confused by the question. He hadn't intended to make a political statement, but by then it was too late. One of his questioners, Laura Loomer, a right-wing activist and former Republican candidate for Congress, had already posted an edited video of the conversation online. It had rocketed around the internet, amassed nearly 2 million views on X. The caption read, Somali illegal aliens proclaim support for Ilhan Omar and Joe Biden inside Panama migrant camp, ! So this, I find the story interesting. I think the treatment is, I guess, I don't know Laura Loomer, and I don't really know anything about her except for that she's wild. But the treatment of like, sort of how dare they, I assume Laura Loomer would say, well, why do you send journalists to the Darién Gap? Why do you do these things? We are journalists too. And fair enough. Like, I think she has a point. But what is interesting to me is how this same part of the internet that we're talking about as it relates to Candace Owens are pushing deeper and deeper and farther for more content, more stuff. And so on the one hand, it's sensational claptrap. On the other hand, it is a sign of the maturation, I guess, of this space. How did it hit you?
Differently, in that the subhead in this is the treacherous migrant crossing in Panama is drawing packs of American activists who are distorting how immigration is perceived and debated at home. So they're trying to say, I mean, the upshot of this is that right-wingers are exaggerating the threat of the immigrants coming across the southern border. And it's like, guys, why don't you go cover the actual immigration crisis that's happening? Like, the crisis that's happening on the border is not that right-wingers are exaggerating it. This is not actually the story. Like, sure, I guess this is marginally interesting, but like, why don't you tell us what's really going on? Like, what's happening on the border is an actual political crisis for the Democratic president. Go cover that and write a real story about it. This is like marginalia. And these people are marginal.
Media criticism is the first refuge of the scandal.
This is a stupid story.
I found it interesting, but I agree with the point about trying.
It is an attempt to marginalize what's a real issue. By covering marginal, crazy people.
They accuse these marginal people of building a narrative, but the story itself is also building a narrative, right?
Completely. Yes, that's a perfect way to put it.
Okay. I read with total fascination this piece in The Atlantic by Helen Lewis, the British right's favorite sex offender. What does a conservative magazine do when a columnist is convicted of attempted rape? I had not followed this story. Panagiotis Theodokoropoulos, but he is known as Taki, and he has been writing in The Spectator for a bajillion years. And he was a beloved, I think, 20 years ago, probably.
Yeah, PaleoCon here.
Yeah. 20 years ago was a beloved figure of the sort of, I don't know if we would say sort of Rush Limbaugh-ish, but the kind of people who...
Old school Pat Buchanan, right.
The kind of people who use the term feminazi unironically. And his whole thing was he was rich, he was posh, he was outrageous, and he sort of became a mascot for the Spectator's energy and how they were. And this piece really, interestingly, catalogs the rape charge that was made against him by a woman in Switzerland, how it has worked through. And I found it really interesting because it was a great, I find the British press fascinating for its similarities and its differences from the American press. And I found the behind the curtain look at how everything works and what the dynamics are and all of that stuff to be very interesting.
I have to admit I've not read this piece, so can offer no comment on.
It is, though I will fault it for this, and not really a fault, but we should acknowledge when you're decrying sensationalism by writing about sensational things, you're also benefiting by the same sensationalism. But that's a hot key. That should be a hot key on the Wretches keyboard. And here I am taking a third lap on it. So yes, in the spirit of transparency.
Chris, this is a fascinating story in the Washington Post, which reports that the Qatari royal invested about $50 million in the pro-Trump network Newsmax. And the paper writes, a member of the Qatari royal family invested roughly $50 million in Newsmax, according to documents and representatives for the media company and the royal, in a moment of acute Middle East tensions during the Trump administration. The investment bolstered a key conservative media outlet at a time when Qatar was facing intense diplomatic pressure from its neighbors and seeking allies in the United States. At the time the investment was made, a coalition of countries led by Saudi Arabia and the UAE had established a diplomatic and economic blockade against Qatar, accusing it of supporting terrorist groups across the Middle East. Qatar had counted on its relationship with the United States for protection, but President Donald Trump initially sided with its regional rivals, praising their move in 2017 and criticizing Qatar for funding terrorism. Qatar, of course, is the patron of Hamas.
Right.
Where Hamas leaders are holed up in a Four Seasons hotel. And this is fascinating because we, of course, have followed the story about how many of these Middle Eastern countries have funded think tanks and used those think tanks to speak at events and have confabs in their countries and to get their message out that way in this country. But now they are also funding American media outlets, and I think this is dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's great that there is real coverage of this.
It's great that there's real coverage of it, and it's also I don't believe that we can disqualify journalistic outlets just because of who funds them. I don't think that's a good enough, a sufficient answer. But with Newsmax, you're like, when you're trying to put the pieces together, like, what's the Newsmax model? What are they trying to do? This provides some clarity on that.
Well, this headline amused me in Politico, and that the House Foreign Affairs Committee.
Oh, this is primo.
Held,
come on, this is excellent.
It held a hearing earlier this week on the Biden administration's withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the headline in Politico was "Republicans fixate on messy Afghanistan withdrawal."
They fixate,
and
when you can't pounce, you fixate. When pouncing is out, fixating is in.
And you'll recall that 13 Americans died during that withdrawal. So
But you
fixation might be in order.
hard to imagine the headline Democrats fixate, and maybe it's out there. Maybe Politico ran this piece. Hard to imagine Democrats fixate on January 6th. Maybe Politico did this, but come on.
Chris, that brings us to our facile files.
A
for the
robust
week.
facile
Yes,
file.
Yes.
Colin has given us a bumper crop of facileness this week.
And right after we wrapped last week, I went back to my office and sat down at my computer and saw the following on the front web page of the New York Times. Can climate cafes help ease the anxiety of planetary crisis? The groups, which are springing up across the country, allow people to talk through their emotions around environmental change. In a small room in Lower Manhattan, a group of 8 New Yorkers sat in a circle sharing kombucha and their fears against the background of pattering rain and wailing sirens. I mean, obviously, they're not drinking beers.
Amazing.
In Champaign, Illinois, a psychotherapist facilitating a meeting for other therapists held up a branch of goldenrod, asking the half-dozen participants online to consider their connection to nature. And in Kansas City, Missouri, a nonprofit that runs a weekly discussion on Zoom began its session with a spiritual reading and a guided meditation before breaking into groups to discuss topics like the ethics of childbearing amid a fast-rising global population and concerns of resource scarcity. All were examples of a new grassroots movement called climate cafes. These in-person and online groups are places for people to discuss their grief, fears, anxiety, and other emotions about the climate crisis.
Amazing. Just amazing. And last week we talked about how Media Matters lamented the decline in the amount of climate change coverage that was going on in the networks. So we have the answer. Everybody needs to go to a climate cafe and look at Goldenrod and focus, and then we will have the courage to increase the number of climate change stories. We got it. We're good.
Next up, we have another New York Times story.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure these were bundled together with the piece about, right-wingers distorting the threat of the immigration crisis on the southern border.
New York Times, Republicans who do not regularly watch Fox are less likely to back Trump. Survey data shows more of them believe he acted criminally. Republicans who get their news, this is Ruth Iginelic. Ms. Iginelic. Republicans who get their news from non-conservative mainstream outlets are less likely to support Donald J. Trump than those who follow conservative outlets. And sizable numbers from the first group say they think Mr. Trump acted criminally, according to a recent New York Times Siena College poll. The division could affect his standing among Republicans in the general electorate, a decidedly different group from GOP primary voters. That is in line with research that shows the changing media habits of Fox News consumers may actually change their views. Now, look, correlation is not causation. Correlation is not causation. Why do you think they watch Fox News? Now, I'm not saying that it has no effect. I'm not saying that their media consumption habits have no effect, that these things are unrelated entirely. But this is a self-selecting group. These are people who are going there for this. And by the way, they stopped watching Fox. The people who don't watch Fox, they stopped watching Fox because they were sick of it and they went someplace else. The graphic, what seized me, what pounced on me,
what you fixated on.
What I fixated on was this graphic and the headline on it. You are what you watch, ? Trump support among Republicans who primarily consume mainstream media, 79%, conservative media, 100%. Or you watch what you are, right? We tend to overstate, again, not that there's no effect, but we tend to overstate the ability of media outlets to brainwash people. If Fox News was capable of brainwashing its viewers, Ron DeSantis would be the Republican nominee, right? They would have done that. They would have achieved that goal that they laid out for themselves last year. They did not. Their viewers said, we want more Trump. And you know what Fox said? Cool. We were only kind of fooling around with this guy, and we really do like Trump the most after all. Sorry, never mind. More Trump. So, yes, there's an effect on the audience, but the audience's effect on the outlet is much greater.
Totally agree.
Harumph.
Totally agree. Wait, I lost my rundown here.
Oh, no. It's the time for Nate Moore's contribution with the facile fact check. And regular listeners will know of my disdain for a lot of the work of fact-checking in general as a subset of journalism. And one of my complaints about it is that it very often elevates things that people would not otherwise have heard of. To wit, PolitiFact informs us there is no video of Bill and Hillary Clinton eating human flesh with a Haitian gang leader named Barbecue, as social media users have claimed. Well, thank you, PolitiFact, because otherwise, how would we have known?
Real public service.
How would we have known? And so here, not only do you have a facile, like, gee, you think not, but also the elevation of the meme and the amplification of it. And by the way, anyone who thinks that Bill and Hillary Clinton were cannibals who hung out with a Haitian gang leader named Barbecue probably is not going to go, well, I thought it, but now that PolitiFact has said so, I guess I've got to walk away from my previously held beliefs. Woof.
Chris, that brings us to our sports section.
Oh, yeah.
We have the basketball coach at Louisiana State University. Is that who this woman is?
That is who that is. That's what LSU is.
Well, I didn't know if she's the basketball coach. Lashes out at Washington Post and threatens legal action. Okay, what happened here?
So in a press conference, her name is Kim Mulkey. I'll read the lead from the Associated Press. LSU coach Kim Mulkey lashed out and threatened legal action against the Washington Post, saying the paper had spent 2 years pursuing a, quote, hit piece about her and that it gave her a deadline to answer questions this past week while the defending national champion Tigers were preparing for the women's NCAA tournament. The lengths he has gone to try to put a hit piece together, Mulkey said of award-winning Post reporter Kent Babb, whom she did not mention by name. After 2 years of trying to get me to sit with him for an interview, he contacts LSU on Tuesday as we're getting ready for the first-round game of this tournament with more than a dozen questions, demanding a response by Thursday, right before we're scheduled to tip off. Are you kidding me? That's a ridiculous deadline that LSU and I could not possibly meet, and the reporter knew it. It was just an attempt to prevent me from commenting and an attempt to distract us from this tournament. It ain't going to work, buddy. Babb confirmed to the Associated Press that he's working on a profile of Mulkey, but declined further comment. The Post also declined comment.
Do we know what the nature of this hit piece is?
Well, what I find interesting, of course, is Tuesday to Thursday, if you've been working on a story for 2 years and you've been trying to get some, let me make a comparison here to P. Diddy, if you will allow me. Why did the Department of Homeland Security raid the Didsters' homes around the country? We assume that it is because negotiations had broken down between prosecutors and Team Diddy, and that they said, okay, fine, if you're not going to work with us anymore, we're just going to have to drop the hammer. And I assume that that's what this reporter basically did, was said, okay, well, we've been trying. I need this by Thursday. It's Tuesday. Please answer these questions or I'm going to press. Seems okay. I don't find a particular problem with this.
I'm eager to see the story.
Now I know what it's. Now I want to know what the Post is working on, and I would imagine that unless Mulkey has managed to get the story killed, which I bet she hasn't, she has only dramatically increased the interest in what will happen and what comes out in the story.
She's increased my interest.
Yes, if we can make Eliana interested in sports coverage, then we know that there's something going on there. But this
amazing.
Story,
yeah,
this story, which was flagged for me by an alert reader or alert listener, it's one of the best. It was we put it as the timeout in last week's note at the Dispatch. It is the most Washington story I think I have ever read.
It's amazing.
It is the story of how the Northwest Washington, D.C. Little League was basically ripped to shreds by these parents, and allegations of cheating and lawsuits, and just, it's like, if you wanted to encapsulate how DC fails, this has got it all. This story has got it all. It made me very happy that I did not have to endure DC Little League. Thank you, Fort Hunt Little League. Thank you, Fort Hunt Little League.
Yeah, so it's the headline is Little League Scandal Royals Washington, D.C. Elite. Subheadline, either you end this crap or I'm walking. Cheating allegations in wealthy corner of U.S. Capitol pits high-powered parents against one another and leads to a discovery. And it's about a 12-year-old Little League team or 12-year-old Little League.
The 12U. I'm a veteran. We've sponsored. Insane Wretches has sponsored in the 12U category, not in this same league, but we're patrons of this kind of baseball.
And one team was too good.
Yes.
And a couple of parents got
problem.
together and accused the coach of poaching kids who weren't eligible to play in the league, and demanded the formation of a committee that drew up a 40-page report. They found the coach did indeed pull kids from, neighborhoods that weren't part of the league and turn the whole league upside down. It's bananas.
It's just such a great story. Wall Street Journal, well done.
It's bananas.
What a great story. The Wall Street Journal also gives us our style section piece for this week,
which is,
how much more ranch can America take? Hidden Valley seeks total domination. And this is a great piece. Now, I learned a lot.
And there's an amazing picture of a woman at her wedding
ranch fountain, yeah.
Dipping something into a ranch fountain.
Yeah, it's a very, yeah. It's a real bummer, is what I would say.
So the Journal writes of Hidden Valley, the company has a new goal. Hidden Valley helped ranch flow past ketchup and barbecue sauce by store sales. Now it wants to double sales of ranch products other than its traditional dressing. On the agenda, Hidden Valley is rolling out more flavors in its Ranch With line. Think garlic ranch to drizzle on your pizza, pickle ranch to pair with hot dogs, and cheese ranch for fries, nachos, or pretzels in collaboration with Cheez-It. Ranch makes bad food taste good, and good food taste great, says Higgins. Ranch evangelization efforts include the company sifting through hundreds of posts on social media each month, such as those from fans showing off their Hidden Valley Ranch tattoos.
The part I found most interesting was I did not know the story of where ranch came from. I did not know that it came to us from Alaska. I did not, from Alaskans. A couple named Gail and Steve Henson, who popularized ranch dressing. I did not know. Did you know who owned Hidden Valley Ranch?
Clorox?
Clorox
Yes.
Bleach. Way to go. And since 1972, they have owned ranch. And are you a ranch person?
Not really.
So
I'm a ketchup person, and I'm shocked to hear that ranch sells more than ketchup.
well, ketchup is
and a barbecue sauce person.
Ketchup has faced a lot of
I'm
competition.
not really like a creamy kind of dressing or sauce person. I'm a tomato-based sauce person.
I'm a make your own salad dressing person, very much. Of all of my conceits, including making French press coffee and several other things that I'm persnickety about, I make my own salad dressing. Now, I will say that Hidden Valley Ranch, the powdered sleeve, if you make it at home, is excellent. Is excellent, and I'm a big fan. But if I'm out, I'm blue cheese. I'm blue cheese all the way. Hundo P. You're no blue cheese?
I'm not really into ranch or blue cheese. I like it with some chicken wings, but I'm definitely not putting it on pizza.
So my
or hot dogs. I mean, come on.
The Northern West Virginia way of blue cheese. So fries, French fries dipped in blue cheese dressing, yes. Hundo P. Yes. From Wings Olay, R.I.P. of Morgantown, yes. But my hometown salad dressing is a slightly sweet and tangy Roquefort dressing. So it's pink, like a soft pink French dressing. and it's creamy, and it's got Roquefort dressing in it, or Roquefort cheese in it, and it's just out of sight. And I would just tell you, ranch people, you need to settle down with the ranch on everything, with the ranch at your wedding, with ironic ranch consumption. Ranch as cultural identifier, it's too much with you people. It's just you need to calm down, and save space for delicious Roquefort dressing. It's out there for you. It loves you, and whatever dressing you're having, please make it at home.
Chris.
Yes.
That brings us to our obsessions of the week.
Obsessed like a
we
ranch
break
tattoo.
Down the stories that we can't get out of our heads.
All right.
And mine is.
Oh yeah.
Don't just wait till I get to the kicker, okay?
I'm not going to do any. I know that this is a real thing for you, and I'm going to let you have it.
The Atlantic ran a piece. The headline is "The War at Stanford" by a Stanford student journalist. The war at Stanford. I didn't know that college would be a factory of unreason. And it's powerful because it's a first-person piece describing the insane anti-Semitism on campus, talks about a graduate student teaching assistant by the name of Hamza El-Budali, who called for the assassination of Joe Biden. He said, "I'm not calling for a civilian to do it, but I think the military should. I'd be happy if Biden was dead."
They didn't want to kill him, but
He
thought
thinks
someone should do it.
kill Biden. And then on the Stanford campus, there was a Palestinian protesters put up a tent on the green, and pro-Israel protesters put up a tent. And then in contravention of university rules, the pro-Palestinian protesters were sleeping on the green on campus. And the university, for a long time, was refusing to force these people to go back to their freaking dorm rooms. And the students said, they're not, they won't leave until the university negotiates with them. And part of what they were demanding was a paid trip to Gaza, something like that. And so this piece that went up was praised everywhere. Everywhere. People loved it. And it did grind my gears.
Here we go.
Because on February 16th, 2024, the Washington Free Beacon and our reporter, Aaron Sibarium, wrote almost exactly the same piece, citing quotes from the exactly the same TA, describing exactly the same standoff between student protesters on the green and the Stanford administration's refusal to deal with them. And I do think it underscores how a lot of times when excellent journalism is done in conservative outlets, it's totally overlooked. And when the same stories are told in the mainstream, like they're celebrated and praised. But there is great journalism being done in a lot of different places. And then stuff is taken and not given credit.
Well, this
where it's due.
This is the same phenomenon we talked about earlier with self-loathing Republicans and self-loathing Democrats. It feels better. So, I talk about strange new respect. People love strange new respect. The feeling of like, yeah, that's right. People someplace else agree with what we've been saying before. And then, as you say, instead of acknowledging it when it comes through your own side of things in the flow, it gets extra attention because it's coming from the other side.
And I do want to note that some people did note this. National Review noted it, and we'll link that.
Jeff Blahar in his corner post, which will be in there. So at least you got some props. You want me to obsess now?
You obsess.
Now I shall obsess. Andrew Sullivan, who is great and who I love and who we've had on this show. I don't agree with everything that he says, but he's always thoughtful and makes me reevaluate my own positions. He's very good. But let me tell you, this time he got me. He hit it right on the screws. I 100% endorse everything that he said on his Substack. What have I done to deserve this? And it is a long Jeremiad against people listening to things and watching things without headphones in public spaces. And of all of the things that are diminishing our society, more than adult men wearing dress sneakers to work, more than ranch fountains at weddings, more than all of the many vicissitudes that afflict us trying to have a civilization, the one that absolutely scorches me are the people who believe that it is okay to listen to things on their phones in shared spaces, in common spaces, without headphones on. And Andrew writes, the degradation of public space in America isn't entirely new. Of course, as soon as transistor radios became portable, people would carry them around for music or sports scores or construction sites or whatever. But the smartphone era, thanks once again, Steve Jobs, you were so awesome, gave us an exponential jump in the number of people with highly portable sound broadcasting machines in every public space imaginable. In other words, hell on toast. If you're easily offended by profanity, do not read this piece. But it touched a place in my soul about how much I hate this, and I have thought warmly of it each day this week.
Okay, I agree with this. I do agree with this. And the worst is people on FaceTime.
Yes, FaceTime's terrible. Yes.
I mean, come on. However, I will cop to on an airplane playing for my kid her little videos at the sound of about white noise. Okay, I know it's horrible, but like I have to.
Look, when it's a child.
Would you rather be tortured by my kids crying and
when it's a small child? I don't know what the cutoff line age is. 7, 6 or 7. I don't know. If it's a little child, I'm going to make special allowances. I'm able to. I'm as a parent myself. I'm able to find mercy for people who are trying to get this done with kids, and I get it. And I do not. There's no hate in my heart for parents who are trying to just get through, unless. Are we at dinner at a restaurant? Is your child and this is so airplanes. People have heard me talk about this many times, but people at restaurants whose kids have, when I see Donald Trump at dinner at his country club with his iPad out at the table and he's like watching videos and stuff, I think, I got to say, my sons and I play Risk sometimes when we're out to dinner. We play on my phone. We pass it around, or if it's just two of us, sometimes we'll play chess on my phone and we'll pass it back and forth. And I'm not saying that I'm a Luddite or puritanical about no devices ever, ever, ever. But adults particularly who believe that they can go, do you like to eat a quiet lunch alone?
Yes.
To go to a restaurant, maybe to sit at the bar, to sit by yourself at a little table or breakfast and sit there. When adult people have the volume up on their devices and are watching something, I want to throw them through a plate glass window. It absolutely infuriates me. So it's my fault. I should be more serene about these matters. I shouldn't be so easily bothered. But I guess for me, it comes down to this. I hate noise. I'm sensitive. I don't like noise. I don't like it noisy. I'm not a person who can have the TV. Nate moves his computer because
Nate's computer is being so annoying.
Nate's computer is more annoying than a person watching a TikTok video with the sound on at Waffle House. But for me, right, like I don't like I don't like to have the TV on in the background, for example. Some people are totally fine with it. They're good to have noise on it. Like my mother was that way. She could have the TV on in the house and just sort of
Me too.
Noise people just that you're not listening to. I don't like it. So I understand part of this is on me, but I must say, Andrew Sullivan, God bless you. God bless and keep you this Holy Week, Andrew Sullivan.
Chris, that brings us to my favorite time of the week, which is reader mail. and we have a note from Andy Allisberg in Greenwich, Connecticut. And Andy writes, "This morning I read the attached New York Times article titled, 'Netanyahu Assails Schumer, Dramatizing Partisan Split Over Israel.' The article contained two elements that caught my attention. First, it said that Schumer tried to lay out a case, quote, that Americans can love and support Israel and still be deeply critical of Mr. Netanyahu and his far-right government," end quote. Today, the Israeli government is a unity government with leaders from across the political spectrum. Further, the Israeli people are united in supporting the government's goal of destroying Hamas. It is wrong to suggest that Israel today is led by a, quote, far-right government. Later in the article, the author asserts that, quote, conservative Jewish groups and Republicans were stunned and dismayed by the Schumer speech. The author is wrong again. The speech received a harsh condemnation by the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. In a statement, the conference stated that, quote, its member organizations represent the broad swath of American Jewry. It seems to me that the author seeks to imply that the Israeli government represents a fringe, and opposition to Schumer's speech is not widespread among Jewish leaders in the U.S. I think the opposite is true. I write this wearing a Holderness and Bourne shirt, which Chris recommended on a recent podcast. I have many. I wonder, Chris, if you have an opinion of the debate among the golf shirt buying community of tech fiber versus cotton.
Well, first, Mr. Allisberg, I will say that what Chuck Schumer is not an ordinary person. He's not a regular American Jewish voter. He is the majority leader of the United States Senate. And the things that he says have different and extra implications as a very high official in the United States government. So I think what this article was trying to do, which was like, Chuck Schumer isn't a spiritual leader for the Jewish people of America or a thought leader even, right? He's a person who has a unique amount of access to setting policies for the United States of America. And that's how this should be seen. And that's why it was so provocative, right? Not because Chuck Schumer's Jewish, but because Chuck Schumer is the Senate Majority Leader. That's the difference. So I tend to agree.
I totally agree. And when I read this piece, I had exactly the same reaction. And it grinds my gears when I see the Israeli government right now described as far right, because as Andy Allisberg notes, they have a unity government right now that includes Bibi and his rivals. And second, that the major Jewish groups denounced the speech and were critical of Schumer. And I think the New York Times does not want to portray it that way. They have resisted at every turn, noting that sort of complexity.
As for the complex question of golf shirts, Mr. Allisberg, I will say, the correct answer is both. In my cupboard, I have 2 stacks of golf shirts. One are the basket weave cotton shirts that I purchase mostly from LL Bean. And then you have the sport fiber. Both are good. Both are important. Depends on the season. Depends on the occasion. I'm drill, baby, drill. I'm an all of the above when it comes to golf shirts and polo shirts.
Our next note is from Daniel in Alexandria, Virginia, and he writes, "Hi, Eliana and Chris. Longtime listener and fan. I learned of your show via the Commentary podcast. Just wanted to drop a quick note to thank Eliana for recommending Feud on FX Hulu recently. That is the show about Truman Capote and his relationship with these New York society women. Yes. I binged season 1 this week, not realizing until several episodes in that it was a different season and story than the Capote season Eliana mentioned. But season 1 is nevertheless fantastic, and Jessica Lange as Joan Crawford was particularly amazing. I'm now making my way through season 2, Capote, and it's even better."
I believe it, but I will say that if you're looking for something to binge watch, Benson from the 1980s is available and highly watchable on Amazon. So if you're looking, they're 22 minutes long. I enjoy them every time, and the theme song's great. So there you go.
All right, Daniel, write us back and let us know what you think of Benson.
Oh, well, how could you not love it?
Chris, that brings us to your favorite time of the week, where I am forced to say something nice, but please lead by example.
This wonderful piece by Andrew Morantz in The New Yorker, Among the AI Doomsayers. And I think this is appropriate for Holy Week, appropriate for this will be coming out just ahead of Easter. Keep hope, right? Keep hope for the future. This piece is a fascinating journey into this weirdo community in the Bay Area that is obsessed with AI and obsessed with AI and obsessed with AI. And this woman who is the sort of the protagonist in the story, Katja Grace. Grace's dinner parties, semi-underground meetups for doomers and the doomer curious have been described as, quote, a nexus of the Bay Area AI scene. At gatherings like these, it's not uncommon to hear someone strike up a conversation by asking, what are your timelines? Or what's your P parentheses doom? Timelines are predictions of how soon AI will pass particular benchmarks, such as writing a top 40 pop song, making a Nobel-worthy scientific breakthrough, or achieving artificial general intelligence, the point at which a machine can do any cognitive task that a person can do. Some experts believe that AGI is impossible or decades away. Others expect it to arrive this year. P-doom is the probability that if AI does become smarter than people, it will either on purpose or by accident annihilate everyone on the planet. For years, even in the Bay Area circles, such as speculative conversations, were marginalized. Last year, after OpenAI released ChatGPT, a language model that could sound uncannily natural, they suddenly burst into the mainstream. The doomers are aware that some of their beliefs sound weird, but mere weirdness to a rationalist is neither here nor there. McCaskill, the Oxford philosopher, encourages his followers to be moral weirdos, people who may be spurned by their contemporaries but vindicated by future historians. Many of the AI doomers I met describe themselves neutrally or positively as weirdos, nerds, or weird nerds. Some of them, true to form, have tried to reduce their own weirdness to an equation. You have a set amount of weirdness points, a Canonical Posts advises. Spend them wisely. And what I took from this piece, which has a Tom Wolfian quality of a scene story about something that's happening, and it was really cool. I love that kind of journalism. And the other thing that struck me was, you're not in charge. These are not things that you're in charge of. I don't think AI is going to destroy the planet. I don't think it's going to destroy humanity. But even if it is, why would I meet up with people and obsess over it and talk about it and ruin dinner parties and a lot of things? Climate change might, nuclear war might, the Ebola virus might. A lot of things might do us in. But it's not a good use of my time to dwell on these things and obsess on these things.
Chris, my favorite of the week is Maureen Dowd's excellent interview with James Carville, which is getting a lot of attention because Carville had so many colorful and memorable things to say. He talks about Biden's poll numbers, and he says, she writes, he offered a body metaphor about President Biden's shaky approval ratings. When I look at these polling numbers, it's like walking in on your grandma naked. You can't get the image out of your mind. And he has similar things to say about the Democratic Party's messaging. A suspicion of mine is that there are too many preachy females dominating the culture of his party, Dowd writes. Don't drink beer, don't watch football, don't eat hamburgers. This is not good for you. The message is too feminine. Everything you're doing is destroying the planet. You've got to eat your peas. If you listen to Democratic elites, NPR is my go-to place for that. The whole talk is about how women and women of color are going to decide this election. I'm like, well, 48% of the people that vote are males. Do you mind if they have some consideration? The whole thing is worth reading and
laugh out loud funny. And
James Carville may be in the running now for Washington Free Beacon Man of the Year. That is all the time we have for the news about the news. If
Happy
you have
Easter.
a story you want us to talk about, email us at wretches@nebulouspodcasts.com and sign up for our newsletter at nebulouspodcasts.com. This has been Ink-Stained Wretches from Nebulous Media, produced by Colin Chicola. Find us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Wretches.
Love it.